afternoon, everyone. Welcome to At America. My name is Adila. Okay, thank you. My name is Adila. I am one of the e-guides here in At America, and we would like to welcome all of our audience joining us here with me and also online. We hope that everyone is doing great and staying safe. For those of you who are new here, At America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and this is a place for everyone to discuss, share their ideas, and learn more about the United States. As we gather here today to address a critical issue that affects many individuals, it's essential to hear from those who have dedicated their lives to advocating for change. With that, I would like to invite our distinguished guests to deliver a welcoming remarks and share their perspective on the issue. Please give a warm welcome to Sarah Ahmed Farah, Head Sub-Office of the International Organization for Migration, Indonesia.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I forgot my glasses, so I'll try my best to read my notes. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to At America for this event organized by the UN country team in Indonesia, and of course with support from the US Embassy. So my role today is just to give the opening remarks and before the resident coordinator, and I think it will be shared by the MC. Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today to launch the Together We Say No to Sexual Exploitation and Abuse, and you can see a very nice thing behind my back, campaign in Indonesia. A huge thanks to At America and the United States government in Indonesia for partnering with us today, and the continued long-standing collaboration between IOM and US government on institutional priorities like PSEA and implementing a wide range of projects ranging from counter-trafficking, smuggling, border management, and others. So thank you. We're also pleased to have with us Ibu Valerie Gilead, the UN Resident Coordinator for the Republic of Indonesia, who will shortly be delivering the introductory remarks. Welcome. Sincere gratitude to Ms. Kavita Babu, Resident Legal Advisor at U.S. Embassy in Jakarta. Jennifer Rosenzweig, Acting Country Director of WFP. Inda Putri, the member of the Indonesian Society for Disaster Management, for being speakers at the talk show today. IOM has been at the forefront of PSEA campaign. From 2011 to 2018, the former IOM Director General, the late Ambassador William Lacey Swing, served as the Interagency Standing Committee Champion on protection from sexual exploitation and abuse. IOM as an organization takes sexual exploitation and abuse seriously and has a mandatory reporting mechanism. All staff and partners are bound to standards of behavior at all times, and especially when working with beneficiaries of our assistance, including during emergency responses. IOM's reporting platform, We Are All In, is available to everyone, including non-staff, to raise any report on sexual exploitation and abuse and other forms of misconduct. IOM also has serial consequences of abuse of affected population. This constitutes gross misconduct and is ground for disciplinary action, including summary dismissal and referral for criminal prosecution where appropriate. IOM hopes that with this launch of Together We Say No package targeting frontline humanitarian workers in simplified language will strengthen our commitment towards preventing SEA and delivering services to vulnerable beneficiaries. IOM will continue to champion PSEA in Indonesia as a member of the PSEA network in Indonesia. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here today and hope we all leave with some actionable takeaways from today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We are thrilled to have you here. And now let us hear an opening remarks from the UN Resident Coordinator in Indonesia. Please welcome Valerie Julian.
Okay, so that's the good spot where to be. Good afternoon, everybody. A big pleasure to be with you all. Good afternoon, Kavita, Sarah, Jennifer, and all of you who are here, and also all the people who are online, I understand. And it's really a pleasure for me to be here at this event on Say Together We Say No. And together we say no to sexual exploitation and abuse, which is an aberration, because this is what it is. When you think of it, this is really an affront to all the principles and rights that people have, and principally women, but not only women, because unfortunately it can affect also men. And this actually also in reality contradicts the very international conventions and treaties and laws that are established in most countries. Because if you think of it, there isn't a country that says, yes, that's right, you can do that. So there is the hypocrisy of a law system and the fact that it is not followed up. But the Secretary General of the United Nations, and let me quote him here, he said, let us declare in one voice, we will not tolerate anyone committing or condoning sexual exploitation and abuse. We will not let anyone cover up these crimes with the UN flag. Every victim deserves justice and our full support. Together, let us deliver on that promise. But we need to look at what are the root causes of that situation of sexual exploitation and abuse. And definitely, this finds its roots in the same place that gender-based violence finds it as well, which is a power imbalance, or at least the belief that some are powerful and others are not. So that's really that situation where there is somebody that has the power over somebody else. And in that case, I have to say, it is even more abhorrent because people who are doing that, they are doing that on populations and communities that are already suffering a great deal because they are in a situation of humanitarian crisis or poverty or anything else where humanitarian intervention or development intervention is taking place, and because they are in need. And don't we think that it is so amazingly disgusting that people will profit on this moment of vulnerability to do horrible things to those people? Because it affects people beyond even what we can think of. When people are sexually exploited or abused, this is a mark, this is a scar on them. It's a trauma. So we add another trauma to a situation that is already traumatic. So that's what we need to think of, is that, well, it's not only a misconduct, as we call it. It's not a misconduct. It's a crime, plain and simple. So of course, within the UN, I mean, we can say, and I can say myself very confidently, that out of the maybe 100,000 plus workers that we have in the UN, including permanent staff and more consultants, if you take the entire workforce, I can say that the majority of the workers in the UN work with integrity. However, there are some instances, unfortunately. There has been allegation, and there has been more than allegation because there has been occurrences of sexual exploitation and abuse also perpetrated by some members of the UN community. And this not only creates a big stain on what we are, because it's only a few that will stain an entire organization, but once again, the victims are left with a big scar. And this is exactly
the headquarters in Geneva, and then there were regional launches that followed. So Indonesia is actually one of the pilot countries in the Asia Pacific region. So IOM in Asia Pacific covers 40 countries, ranging from Iran to the Pacific Islands, Vanuatu, And Indonesia is the first country in Asia Pacific which is piloting this launch. And hopefully it happens in a lot of other countries soon as well. The launch also happened at the Vienna level and at a few other regional offices. It has been in collaboration with other UN agencies. It shows joint partnership and the commitment to work with all of the partners together. So this too in Indonesia is just the starting step for the launch. And then we also have plans to continue working with the PSCA network in Indonesia and having a more detailed workshop on the campaign materials.
Thank you very much. Oh, next, I want to know from WFP as one of the initiators as well. Like, this initiative targets partners as well, non-UN staff, including consultant, vendors, something like that. Is there any other initiative or best practices from WFP in regards to promoting PSCA?
And to talk to us about real cases and examples, maybe not real cases, but really relevant pieces. So we spent a lot of time with the team from headquarters and the team from our regional bureau to come up with scenarios and discussions for people to discuss openly that were the most relevant yet, because that sounds too bold. We're at such an early stage, so let me pause and be humble for a moment. Let's call it really emerging, and emerging areas of work is making sure that we make the safe space to work with partners like those who are on the stage here today, to work with our national government counterparts, to work through the cluster system of, for example, the cluster for displacement and protection. And in our role as WFP, as UN agencies, as humanitarian workers and individuals, has really been to convene stakeholders together, listen to the experts, and remain very aware of the context and the barriers. And I think what Ibu Valerie said in the beginning around the power dynamics and trying to address those. So I'll be spending a lot of time this year learning from colleagues who know so much more than I do about this in the context of Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you. And well, okay, we're doing those kind of initiative or best practices. Did you find any challenges? Yeah, of course, there's a lot, but maybe you can share a little bit with us.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is overcoming some of the very basic some of the barriers. For example, this is an issue that affects men and women. This is not something that only affects men or only affects women. It is something that all of us need to come together and talk about. It's not a women's issue to be addressed only by women. So I think that has been a big barrier to overcome. I think when we look at this from the global perspective and also from the Indonesia perspective, cultural context and interpretation of what is acceptable in different cultural contexts and what is not acceptable, and coming to an agreement that there are certain rights which are rights no matter what. And so I think that is a big piece to overcome. It's so fantastic to be able to partner with translators without borders, in the sense that language really matters. Language is important, and understanding how people communicate these complex ideas, I think is really important. So overcoming that is certainly a big barrier. And then looking at the vastness of Indonesia, I've already heard references made to that. We're sitting here in Jakarta in this beautiful facility, but how do we get this outside of Jakarta? How do we bring it closer to the rest of Indonesia? And how do we stay aware of the different barriers in different cultural contexts across Indonesia? Thanks.
Thank you. That reminds me, actually, speaking of language, if any of you need any interpretation device, it's available, because as you said, like, language matters. So some of you, if you really need like interpretation device to help you better understand about the topic and everything, it's already provided. I'm so sorry, I just like need to remind them. That was a really good point. Uh, what about like external partners such as vendors? Like, did you already include like PSEA during the assessment or during the what is it called when you're about to hire like a partners? Yeah.
So awareness about PSCH and sort of orientation to is part of our hiring practices. So when new staff, consultants, et cetera, come on board with WFP, and that of course is a global standard as well as one that we uphold here. We are increasingly now including in our vendor contracts, in our agreements with different vendors, service providers, academia, academic partnerships, et cetera. We are more and more now including those clauses at a contractual level. I do think, though, there's quite a bit more work to do in this area. So it's not just what's signed in a contract or signed off on in part of your employment package, but actually much more effort needs to be paid to working more with vendors that we work with. And as the video shows, you know, it's everyone from the drivers to the banks to the to those serving food and everyone in between. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bu Jennifer. Now let's discuss a little bit about Indonesia. We have Indah here. Perhaps you can share, based on your experience with MPBI, regarding the SEA situations in Indonesia, perhaps especially during the emergency situations, because I heard MPBI just finalized the assessment on the PSEA risk in Cianjur, right? Yes, of course. I have two. Oh my God, I'm so greedy. I'm so sorry.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Mbak Indah, go ahead.
It's okay, yeah. So hi everyone, my name is Indah. I'm from MPBI, Masyarakat Penanggulangan Bencana Indonesia, or Indonesian Society for Disaster Management. I actually fresh coming from Cianjur, just arrived this afternoon. Yeah. So basically, I will start with like we all know that Indonesia have around like 3,000 to 4,500 disaster every year, and actually the good thing about Indonesia is that every time disaster happen, the community movement is really huge. Like volunteer from all over Indonesia will come to the place and help. Yeah. But this advantage actually, you know, sometimes become an issue because maybe these volunteers and the organization and new humanitarian workers might be, you know, do not know or maybe do not apply. They know but not apply the safeguarding policy, child protection, and then GBV and everything, including the PCH. So this is an issue because, you know, the trend of disaster in Indonesia is getting more complicated, getting more, you know, unpredictable and getting bigger actually. And this number of new volunteers or worker organization who respond to the humanitarian is getting bigger also. So this is like the issue actually here. And then based on our assessment in Cianjur and also from previous disaster as well, we find out actually the SEA age actually is really, likely to be happen aftermath the disaster because of those things that I mentioned before. The new volunteers, the new workers actually do not apply or do not know about the policies. And also, this is the interesting thing that actually Indonesia culture and social life and some norms and also practices actually open the opportunity for the humanitarian workers or volunteers to do the SAH. And then also I would like to highlight like the community sometimes do not understand about the issue. From our previous assessment, for example, when we ask the people about just simple things like catcalling, how do you feel about catcalling? They said that it's a normal thing they just make a jokes to us. But when we really try to probe, to do probing to the woman group, like, how do you feel when someone kept calling you? And they say like, I actually feel discomfort, I actually feel unsafe, I actually feel angry, but I cannot react because when I react, it will be too much because they just make a jokes, for example. So here I would like to highlight that this is like a huge issue in our humanitarian work. And then we think actually applying and enforcing the PSAH movement, we should start by providing, the continuous awareness and raising, not only among the humanitarian workers and volunteers, but also for our community, because it's very important to make them understand about the terms, about, like, is it really the abuse or exploitation, this kind of thing. Because also in Cianjur, for example, we find out when we ask the community about how do you feel when the volunteers who are helping you with the aid asking for something in favor, yeah, to return the aid that they give. And mostly the community will answer, no, 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 they won't do that. And if they do something like that, then we should give what they want because they already help us. So this is really happen, yeah. So we, by having this material, I think we are very happy. So then we can use this material to do awareness raising. And beside the material, I think it's also important for us to set up the complaint mechanism and also the reporting system and the case management, because maybe sometimes they do not report because they don't know how to report it. And especially I will highlight here some cases that related to person with disabilities, for example. We're talking about language, and I will appreciate also if we think about another language that not really considered as a language. For example, the sign language for deaf people, and also the house sign language. We call it home sign language because many of Indonesian deaf people actually do not learn the sign language. And then when we find when they report the PSAH case, actually the case cannot be proceed further in the police, for example, because their report is not considered as a evidence because they do not speak verbal language, and it's really happened in Indonesia. So yes, talking about the accessibility, I think we should also think about this kind of accessibility. Yeah, not we should think also about the provide the materials, maybe also in, I don't know, audio, and also the sign language are available, or maybe Braille, for example. So I want to highlight that. And again, we welcome the initiative from WFP and IOM to produce this material, and we are willing, to together to spread the awareness among us. MPBI actually have networking with 160 grassroots organizations all over Indonesia, and we also have, support the government of Indonesia, Ministry of Social Affairs, Ministry of Health, BNPB. So we're working closely with them. So I think if this material, already launched now, we could use it to, spread it and ensure the awareness are there. Thank you.
Thank you. What a very interesting findings. Yeah, very important and interesting findings. And if I may ask, like, what are you going to do with these findings? What's the next plan?
I think this finding is really important for us to learn that the PSAH actually is there. So we're thinking about, together with the network, we have now Maria as our network focal point, and we are thankful for that because, doing this PSAH alone is like really, what you say, impossible work, I think. So together with the networking, I think we could do more. And first, yes, to, have more awareness, not only for the workers and volunteers, but also for the community, and also maybe to give us support. Because, sometimes organization, the humanitarian organization, they have the policy on them. They have all of the staff sign the policy. But the issue is, are they really, give a briefing to the staff, or maybe not staff, maybe staff you already have a lot of what you say briefing and learning about this issue, but during the disaster, actually, they will recruit many more volunteers, enumerators, working in the field. So sometimes during emergency, because they think, okay, we do not have time or we do not have any resource to give, briefing for the volunteers and the workers, so they just skip. And sometimes, like what we learn in the field is like they just print out the policy on PSAH and put it in the front of the office and expect like all of the volunteers read it and really apply it. So yes, from these learns, we think to have more steps and maybe support the local organization, for example, on how to really apply the policies and guidelines.
Thank you. One more follow-up question. Like you're talking about like in the emergency situations, usually organization hires like volunteers and something like that. Is there any tips or things that they should do first, in order to avoid being involved in SEA, or things that frontline workers need to be considered so they can also contribute in preventing SEA, especially in disaster like situations, emergency situations?
By giving awareness, I think is the most important thing, and then giving them also the real example, because sometimes when we only talk about, okay, you should not do exploitation, and because sometimes, like local organization, for example, most of them actually will recruit the volunteers among the community. So sometimes the language are really, what you say, not really familiar for them. So when we ask, like, do you know about the harassment? Do you know about the exploitation? Do you ever heard about PSAS? They say like, what is that? So I think it is very important to translate it into their language. Maybe not necessarily using the PSAH. Maybe we can give them some example. For example, I cannot say in the community like catcalling. I will say, have someone ever sweet you, for example? Because the community say like, sweet. They more understand about these terms, yeah, for example. So yes, using the right terms, and also, again, another language, another accessibility that we have to think. Why I'm mentioning this? Because, from our assessment, we also find out that organization for person with disabilities actually more and more getting involved in the humanitarian response. So many volunteers actually have some barriers, like hearing impairments or seeing or any other, yeah, including older people. So I think the accessibility is also need to be highlighted again. Thank you, Mas Abi.
Thank you, but wow. Okay, then now from Indonesia, I want to talk a little bit about the US situations. So, Bu Kavita, how's the US situations regarding SEA?
Um, Thank you very much for having me here. I am very excited and humbled to be on stage with these very accomplished individuals here. And to borrow from what Ibu Jennifer had said earlier, I will, as a reminder, to be humble. The United States, while we have made strides, is still very much still working to become and reach our best practices. Our practice, we are practicing. We have not yet gotten there. But I think some of the things that we have found, and it's what is, as we were sitting here talking, one of the connections that I made was the Me Too movement that has sort of became more famous, let me say, during the pandemic, started with the migrant workers and the migrant workers in the West Coast. And that is where that movement first gained its first legs and then became more famous in Hollywood. And that connection to the work that everyone here is doing and how the humanitarian organizations that work with migrants and with refugees and with others who are in need of humanitarian assistance, those individuals are at their most vulnerable when they are coming to you all. And so it is imperative that they are treated with dignity and with respect. And that is why the United States is so proud, and we are so excited to work with organizations like you all to help to spread the good word and to establish a PSEA strategies and practices that can continue to build and be implemented here. There are individual tools or smaller tools and strategies that I think have been used with great success in the United States, and then there are larger things that we are still working to do, and I think organizations, the government, NGOs are still trying to implement. And the bigger things are sort of, one of the bigger the ideas is that this is not it's not just having flyers and videos, but it's a cultural, it's a cultural shift that if your organization does not already empower its women, empower its girls, empower those that are in a less fortunate situation to feel comfortable to report, to feel comfortable to speak out, that is a cultural shift that the organization has to make in order to then implement the smaller tools in a better fashion. The smaller tools are tools that everyone here has already talked about. The survey that IOM used to figure out what are the specific issues and how those issues can be addressed. A survey is something that can be implemented even in the smallest of organizations. But also the idea that your employees, your volunteers, your frontline workers have to feel comfortable enough to give you honest feedback. But that also, that ability to be honest also you have to give that same space to the victims and the survivors. So if the individuals who are seeking out humanitarian need, the refugees and the migrants, they have to feel comfortable enough to do so. And that part of that will also come from knowing that any reporting that they are making is confidential, and stressing that if you are seeking out humanitarian need, if you are following a natural disaster, if you think that your ability to get resources are going to be affected by you reporting, you're not going to report. And so ensuring that everyone who is in a position to report feels comfortable enough to do that is one of the biggest steps that we can take to ensure that all of these wonderful efforts that you're taking lead to the right place.
Thank you. Speaking of working with organizations, as we know that the United States is one of the biggest donor countries for humanitarian and development interventions. Do you know any specific policies maybe for from the U.S. governments before they're collaborating with certain organizations? Is there any consideration regarding PSEA practice?
So yes, the United States, and particularly the State Department, has just recently, I believe, right around the same time that this program was announced, has established and taken advantage of what we call the SEAH, right? The sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment prevention. So the 6 principles that we set forth: the zero tolerance, using a survivor-centered approach, using prevention and risk mitigation, accountability and transparency in the programs that are used, the organizational cultural shift, and then also empowering local communities. And I think that is where, at least in my experience, being a prosecutor and working with prosecutors and law enforcement here in Indonesia, where we are most effective is when we are working with local communities and the local organizations in country that know the culture and that they can translate what we have put together into a language that is most understandable in the communities that you are working in. And so I think that is where the United States can be the most helpful.
Yeah. And is there any future collaborations, maybe this year or next year's, between United States government and maybe the government of Indonesia or the UN agencies or any entities in Indonesia?
I certainly hope so.
Okay.
I do not know of any yet, but I'm sure that we will use this space at America and our partnerships with IOM, with WFP, and everyone on stage to publicize those greatly so that we can take advantage of the momentum that you all are creating here.
Thank you, Bu. Can we have one round of applause for these amazing speakers here? But speaking of the next plan, I want to go circle back to IOM and maybe WFP as well as MPBI. So what's next after this launch? Maybe we can start IOM after this launch. What's next?
like everyone said, just the starting step. And same with this launch event. We're just trying to introduce the event. We're having some social media outreach as well, together with UN in Indonesia, WFP at America, so that people are aware of the resources that we have. The next step is to also start collaborating with our partners, understand their needs. As we mentioned earlier, the materials can be contextualized. So we plan to hold consultations with some of our key partners to understand how best to use this material, how best to disseminate it within the communities as well. And also with the government agencies that we work with, our frontline government partners, including people who are at points of entry at borders in Indonesia, because they're in contact with migrants and refugees on a daily basis. With our vendors also, we plan to have risk assessments embedded in contracts and have more robust assessment of the current practices, reporting systems, services available. Also, what we plan to do after this is have a more mainstreamed approach so that services can be available in a confidential manner without any stigma, so that information is shared only on a need-to-know basis. We integrate and use the existing services that the government of Indonesia is providing for protection cases, especially like GBV cases, and without singling out any SEA case, continue using those services. And since language has been highlighted as a major issue, so we also conducted a lot of trainings with our frontline implementing partners in the past year. So our staff across 9 locations in Indonesia has conducted some trainings with partners including the caretakers and the security guards at refugee accommodations, the nurses, healthcare providers, mental health providers, and we wish to continue this to provide these trainings and awareness raising to even more partners, but also the migrants and the refugees that we work with, and in languages that they understand. So we hope to utilize the community liaison officers we have at IOM who speak the language of the migrants and the refugees so that they can also be aware of cultural sensitivities when discussing topics like SEA, which can be very sensitive and can be stigmatized. So just to make sure that we're not causing any further harm. So yeah, those are some of the efforts that we have in mind for this year, and hopefully like continued collaboration with the PSEH network so that we join forces to work with partners, especially common partners that most UN and non-UN agencies might have. So just to pool in our resources and work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Safri. Ibu Jennifer?
Well, thank you so much. And it's hard to speak second because I think you've, I agree with everything that you just said. In addition to that, what I can say is, as WFP, we will, of course, this year remain committed to continuing to work with across this network and really supporting the, let's say, the operationalization of the network to take some more concrete steps as partners. From the WFP perspective, I think that means, you know, continuing to seek opportunities within our in our role in terms of technical assistance and capacity strengthening to continue to make the space and to keep PSEH on the agenda, to make sure that you know, commitment to working on our own internal systems, like you have mentioned earlier, vendors, partnerships, academia, so to kind of widen, we're really working now to kind of widen the circle of awareness, widen the circle of accountability. And we look forward to this year to continuing to work with partners on this, to hold this space and keep this on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bu Jennifer. Mbak Indah?
From our side, I think we will continue to collecting all of the experience and learning on PSAH implementation during the disaster, because we just also find out that not so many organizations actually doing that. Like we have a lot of learnings on GBV, but not really in particular the PSAH. So I think it's really important for us to keep collecting all of the evidence, all of the learnings that happen in the field, that we can use these learnings actually to also, create a movement together, moving forward, like how to really implement the PSAH. And then, of course, raising awareness, and most importantly, also for us, is to ensure that the community participation also in place, because they are, the most, at risk for this PSAH. So their involvement on this movement actually is really important as well. And of course, we will keep collaborating with all of the organization. And for your information, we're also the focal point for SPEAR in Indonesia. So we will keep ensuring that the standards, the PSA is also part of the standards on the SPEAR. So we will ensure that we, will be part of this awareness raising campaign. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give one more round of applause for these four amazing women here. Now I want to hear from the audience. Do you have any questions, comments, anything you want to share? Yes, over there, the one with the green jacket.
Uh, is this working? Oh yeah. Thank you, Mas. I am Dina from Jakarta. I have no question, but I think I want to add a small thing. Talking about the international partnership, talking about humanitarian issue. According to me, because I am still very fresh into this humanitarian work, but I found some cases while I was working in Central Sulawesi. I hired in tsunami of West Sulawesi, and also Central Sulawesi in 2018 to 2021. I found that international partnership, or so-called like international grant or foundation, I see like they already have the safeguarding policy, and our national partnership, like national NGO, already asked us to sign the international safeguarding and policy, but the national NGO itself has no policy or safeguarding. So that's become the problem, because when we found the cases like involve us as worker or even the community, it's really challenging for us to report, because the desk will be to the donors desk, not to a national organization that we work with. So I think IOM and another organization as international partnership that I found somehow doing local partnership also need to make a strict mechanism to this local organization. So it makes our community and also our workers feel safe, and the access, again, the access like Kak Indah already highlight before, that we do not need only the awareness, but we want to make sure that our knowledge and awareness can be used by providing the safe um, what's that, report mechanism and complaint. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think based on that statement, thank you so much. Can we share a little bit about the internal reporting mechanism, right? Perhaps from IOM, WFP, as well as PBI, and maybe from the US government also, if you can share a little bit about the reporting mechanism.
Thank you for that very relevant comment and question. So yes, we understand that reporting is a challenge, and which is why at IOM and other UN agencies, we are trying to have a strengthened and robust reporting mechanism. So for any partners that work with IOM as well as IOM staff, we have the We Are All In platform, where any suspected cases or even even if it's a suspected case that can be reported, it can be accessed by any external person as well. It is not limited only to partners and to IOM staff. But that being said, Maria would have been in the best position to answer that question, but unfortunately she just left. Maria is the coordinator for the UN PSEH task force in Indonesia. there is a plan which currently has 38 members. There is a plan to have more members in the coming year who are a part of the network, and also have an interagency community-based complaints mechanism. So that will be available in Indonesia to all NGOs and international organizations. So in case any allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse are coming up, they can be safely reported to that community-based complaints mechanism. So hopefully, like, that's something that we can work on this year and launch that, so that access to services is available even for those NGOs that might not be partnering with IOM, WFP, or any other UN agency. Would like to add something?
Okay. Yes, I think this is like very common thing actually happen, yeah. And I think this is like all of our responsibilities now to really ensure that all of the organization actually have and apply the policy, not only put it in the contract of the staff and ask the staff to sign it, that's all, but really ensure that the staff who sign it really understand what it is. I think the accessibility of the reporting mechanism is also very important. For example, we think just to give maybe the number, the contact person, or the Google form is enough, but maybe for some people, they are not very comfortable using maybe the media. Maybe they're comfortable if they can have a phone call directly, for example. So we have to also ensure that the accessibility of the reporting mechanism are there. And also, most importantly, is the case management. It's also very important because the report can be made, but when it's not managed well, it will, disabling other victim maybe to report another cases. So, and we also, as a humanitarian organization, we have to reflect about, are we really like this? When we do the assessment, we ask the organization, like, have you ever have any report on the PSAH issue? Most of them say we don't have any report. But for us, no report doesn't mean the case are not there. We have to ensure and also always evaluate and reflect the system that we made about reporting and also case management. Are you really working? When we do the awareness, yes, it's very important, but also most importantly, how the mechanism are work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to add a little bit, and also data protections, right? Like she mentioned about like sharing it to the donors, but actually like some organizations, you don't have to like share it to the donors. You have your own internal mechanism, and you focus also on the protection of the data itself. So, Jennifer, do you have anything to add?
Not so much to add, but just to say I truly appreciate your question, and also appreciate your introduction as a new emerging humanitarian worker. Hi, it's great. So I think actually this is exactly what we are talking about when it comes to shifting the culture and making it okay and safe to report. I acknowledge, and I think my fellow panel members will also acknowledge, that we don't have a perfect system right now. We don't have a system in which all organizations can equally report and equally hold individuals accountable, or equally case manage and support and provide victims with the care and the support that they need. We have a long way. We have a very long way to go, and I think we do need to acknowledge the inequities that exist, and by acknowledging those inequities, we can figure out how to work together. I think it's also quite important in the way that we link with national systems, local and community systems, that yes, this is the responsibility of all of us as humanitarian agencies and responders and national organizations, etc. And we need to work as a group towards, holding local systems and legal systems accountable as well. And I think it's only with that we can see more equitable, equitable state of being. So welcome to the humanitarian sphere. Thanks for joining. And it's, I think I always go back to, as long as we have enough young people coming online, we really will see some lasting change. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Bu Kavita?
I don't have very much to add to what my other panelists have said here, other than I think it is, as long as there is some reporting mechanism and that the folks that you are working with know that the mechanism exists and that it is a safe place for them to go to, regardless of how technologically advanced it is, if it is a Google form or a social media form or just a phone number or someone's office. It doesn't necessarily matter what the means are, but that they know that it's a safe place to go and that they know it exists. I think that is the necessary first step. And then after that, everything else on top of that is just an improvement.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any other comments from the audience? And also from those who are joining online, feel free because I'm checking here. Nope, not yet. So anyone else from the audience? Yes.
Thank you. So my name is Nabila. I'm from Oxfam in Indonesia. I'm actually one of the safeguarding focal points in Oxfam. Interesting enough that we are actually having the safeguarding workshop for our partners right now and tomorrow. So I'll be more than happy to share my materials with our partners. My question would be, do you have any plan for WFP, IOM, and MPB as well? Do you have any plan to translate the materials into local languages such as Sundanese or Javanese and so on and so forth? And or do you also have any plans? And if yes, what kind of activities that you are expecting to conduct to promote the campaign of this safeguarding and Together We Say No campaign at the grassroots level? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting questions. Any takers? Yeah.
Yeah, actually we have done such thing. So whenever the disaster happen in the area, normally we will try to find any information or education materials, and we will try our best actually to translate it into local language because we, as I mentioned before, we have networking with the 160 grassroots organization, and then of course we will spread it to them if they're willing to collaborate with us to translate into their local language. It will be very interesting for us to have this. And again, I'm sorry, I have to say this not only into the local verbal language, but also